Hey everybody, it's Chuck. I'm not doing my usual vlog where I usually live stream and talk to people and answer questions. Because really, there's something specific I want to talk about. This isn't my usual vlog. I know it's been a while. We'll get to one of those. There's some stuff to talk about, but Wednesday night, it started leaking out, and Thursday it was confirmed that Toys R Us will be liquidating its U.S. assets, which basically what that means is all the stores are going to be closing. Earlier in the month, it had come out that Toys R Us would possibly be looking to close a few more stores than they already had, and then they were going to. Then a few weeks later, after that, a couple weeks ago, rumors started circulating that they might be liquidating their entire operations. Now, I do want to say at this point, I am aware of the rumors that apparently the Canadian Toys R Us has always been doing very well. Operated very differently, and there's a possibility that the Canadian Toys R Us will be purchased, and in that purchase, there may be a purchase of the top 200 U.S. Toys R Us's. I don't know about that. Right now, that's really just a rumor. I have also heard that once the U.S. officially goes into liquidation, that's it. Nothing can be saved. So, with that being said, I really don't know what's going to go on there. And also, I'm really not sure what's going on outside of the U.S., in the U.K., and the rest of Europe. Outside of what we've already heard that the UK is liquidating as well. So I really want to talk about that. The one thing I want to say straight first off before we get into other things is the most important thing to keep in mind here is 33,000 Americans are going to be out of a job. And it looks like that's going to happen in the next 60 days because that's how long they're going to be paid through. And it might even be more than that. As my sister pointed out to me, and she discussed with her class, what happens to the corner deli that was down the block from a Toys R Us that all the employees went to on their lunch hour. And this deli for 10, 15, 20 years has always counted on that daily business as part of its bottom line. Will they have to lay off people or close? Vendors, the guys who work the vending machines, the little candy and snack machines in the warehouses. What's going to happen there? This is always something to think about when a large corporation closes down. There's a ripple effect that goes throughout the entire economy. But right now, and really keep these people in your prayers because I really don't think the economy is as great as people are saying. So 33,000 people at least are going to have a really hard time having to find, jobs. Especially, this time of the year may not really be a hiring season. Basically, what I want to do is I'm going to split this. This might be a little bit of a longer vlog. I want to talk about first what happened and how it happened, at least in my opinion. And then I want to go into some memories of Toys R Us. A lot of people, there's two things I think that a lot of people don't realize or don't remember. Number one, Toys R Us was solvent and debt free until they got bought out. Basically, from what I can understand, the company that bought them out did so to basically push the debt they had onto Toys R Us. So realistically, Toys R Us went from a solvent business to being millions in debt overnight. And it was kind of like I don't want to say a scam or a scheme, but it was something a little dishonest. And really, that was the big push that I think did them in. And I think everything else, the exorbitantly higher prices, the poor stocking in some locations was a result of that. Something else that I think was a big problem is Toys R Us never adopted a online presence or a proper online presence. Here's something that a lot of you might not know. Toys R Us all but signed an agreement with Amazon, Amazon.com, to be their toy store. Like, if somebody bought a toy off of Amazon, they were buying it from Toys R Us, and basically all Toys R Us had to do was have someone in a warehouse that would stick the toy in a box, put a label on it, and ship it out. It was like completely a no-work situation, all the benefits. Something happened. Somebody somewhere thought it was a better idea to go with eBay. And at the last minute, they pulled out, completely blindsiding Amazon. And two things happened. Amazon decided that we're going to sell toys ourselves. We're going to do it. We will stock the items and stuff like that and have them at a lower price than Toys R Us. Basically becoming, at the time, the first online retailer to actually have better deals than a brick and mortar toy store. Target and Walmart, I think even their prices are just slightly higher than Amazon's, or at least they were back then. That's a discussion for another time. Well, as I think as we all know, Toys R Us's eBay store really hasn't worked out for them. I'll say that clearly. It's not as well stocked as it should be, and realistically, they're competing with people who've just gone into a Toys R Us, bought the product off the shelf, and are now selling it on eBay. And their website, let's be honest again, I will be generous and say the last 5 years it's actually been functional. But anything before that, it's been abysmal. And I mean, if I'm really being honest, I would say it would be about 3 years that you could actually type something into the search bar on the website and you actually get a result that's either what you were looking for or related to it. I mean, there were some times, like, I would just put in Transformers and I would get, like, for the motorized bicycles, the little electronic Transformers coming up. It was just horrible. And never had a mobile app. Well, they have a mobile app. It's garbage. It's basically a condensed version of the website, and that works even less. But my whole point is they never adopted the online commerce. I think, like a lot of stores, they felt it would damage their brick and mortar business, and they really didn't see that you had a great number of people year by year increasing who were shopping online. I'll be very honest. While I am sad that Toys R Us is closing, and I want to ask this to you, can any of you remember the last time you were in a Toys R Us? I was in there last June. I maybe bought 2 or 3 things, and that was it. I've had to start buying online. Number one, as a reviewer, I need to get figures early. So a lot of times I have to buy overseas on eBay or online retailers. And number two, their prices are just so high that I do tend to go to Amazon because the prices are generally lower and I can get it in 2 days with Amazon Prime. And up until recently, another discussion for another time, Amazon would have things in stock much sooner than, say, Toys R Us, Target, or Walmart. Now, there were a couple other issues that I'm not going to say led also to the situation that Toys R Us was in, but I think, Toys R Us has done a lot for the toy industry that was good, and I think they've also done a lot that were bad. And that'll be for another video. But those two things, in my opinion, the buyout, and then the lack of the online presence / waking the tiger that is Amazon, really has put them in the position they are in. There's also a much bigger issue, and that's the fact that for the past 25 years, toy sales have been declining across the board. Let's go back to the 1980s. You had Toys R Us, KB Toys, Lionel Kitty City, Children's Place, Kids Palace, or vice versa. It was the same store, but it had two different names, and I might be flipping a few things. By the end of the 1980s, you had Toys R Us and KB toy stores. By the 2000s, you had Toys R Us. There has been a declining business in sales of toys. This past Christmas, basically the death knell for Toys R Us was this past Christmas, where the sales for this holiday season were far lower than their worst case scenario. Hasbro, Mattel, and even Lego. Lego for the first time had underperforming sales. With Hasbro, it was mostly the Star Wars stuff that it's just not selling, and that was Star Wars product across the board. But the bottom line is, and I know a lot of other people have said this, the toy industry has been in a slow decline, gradual decline, and I think this is just another nail in the coffin with the ending of Toys R Us as of right now. I can go into a whole bunch of reasons why the toy industry is in decline. Again, I think that'll be a vlog for another time. I just want to focus on Toys R Us. But, so, hey, there we go. We've got 2 or 3 videos I can do right off the bat. But that's really, in a nutshell, what I think happened with Toys R Us. I think the buyout, and then their lack of adopting a online presence, along with the overall decline of the toy industry. Now, I want to talk about some memories, and I want to open this up to you guys. In the comments below, share whatever memories you have with Toys R Us, positive or negative. Right off the bat, the one thing I remember, the one thing that my family constantly brings up to me is when I was a little boy, and we were going out on the Long Island. I live in Fresh Meadows, Flushing, Queens, New York. Local Toys R Us is at Douglaston. So whenever we're driving eastbound on the LIE, we'd always pass by Douglaston, and the way it was positioned, you always saw the Toys R Us. The family would have to drive out of their way just to avoid passing the Toys R Us on the LIE, so I wouldn't start going into hysterics, begging and screaming for them to stop, let's go, let me look, blah, blah, blah. And that was like almost every time. So it was a bit of a pain back then, but I kind of hope we're all able to joke about it now. But, so that was one. Definitely going in there, holidays, you get your, holiday money, birthday money. Sometimes like when I did my first communion, first confirmation, I get like a little bit of, gift money there. So family would take me to, my mom and dad, or, either or would take me to Toys R Us, and I'd just be walking in there like, big pimpin', yeah. Up and down those aisles. And back then, it really was like a toy warehouse where you just had like the aisles stacked. G.I. Joe figures, G.I. Joe vehicles, Transformers, all this stuff. It was just like, oh. I mean, believe it or not, the video game section was still relatively small by that point because video games really hadn't taken over, but I just, and it was weird. It's like I remember buying, G.I. Joes, but like there were also all these really cool like one and done lines, like Air Warriors. They had the zip lines. There was like this G.I. Joe type of, I think they were like 4-inch tall figures, but they had like, they came in vehicle sets, and the vehicles could combine in different ways with each other. Masters of the Universe. I'm trying to think of like one thing I got that I can remember picking up, and I remember there was like this Cobra jet. It was a VTOL. It was blue. I forget what it was called, but it had like spring-loaded missiles. This was like more towards the late '80s, early '90s, because it had like by that point they were doing spring-loaded missiles and stuff. But getting that, but of course, like Christmas. My sister and I would be in bed. Grandparents would come over. Mom and Dad would sneak out to Toys R Us. My first G.I. Joes came from Toys R Us. My first Transformers came from Toys R Us. I remember that Christmas morning waking up and unwrapping this giant box that was to me, and it was Fortress Maximus. That came from Toys R Us. That was basically these. When you want to see like an 8-year-old lose his mind and reach the point of orgasm, there was that. It's Fortress Maximus. And you know what the funny thing is? I don't know if the Rebirth aired yet that I knew what Fortress Maximus was. I was just reading it off the box and like, oh my god. But yeah, my first NES, the NES Power Pad system. Like I don't know if they call it like the. It wasn't the action system. It was like the power system or whatever with the power pad. That came from Toys R Us, Super Nintendo. Just video. I going to buy video games. I remember during the N64 era having to go back to Toys R Us 2 or 3 times because apparently the first run of No Mercy, if you guys remember, was defective and was erasing memories. So we just had to keep bringing it back. And it was just such a great place. And it was always fun. And even, as an adult collector, with Armada and Energon and Cybertron, being, that's really when I got back into buying Transformers and toys and being able to grab the things off the shelf. It was kind of fun. I bought Primus from Toys R Us. It's really fun times. There were some bad times too, let's be honest. We all had those moments when we were little that, we didn't get what we wanted, so you'd cry and scream in the aisles, or I would sucker them in saying, yeah, no, I don't want anything, I just want to look, and then I would start begging for stuff, and they'd have to. I don't think I've ever been dragged out of Toys R Us, but it was some unpleasant moments, but that's part of childhood. But most of the memories of Toys R Us were immensely positive, and eventually, so that's really what I wanted to end with, just the positive stuff. And like I said in the beginning, think of the people who are going to be out of work. Thankfully it's not right before Christmas, so I think they have a better chance of trying to find another job, and hopefully maybe things will work out. But it is a little sad to think that there's going to be a generation, who are babies and toddlers now who won't have any memories of going into Toys R Us, and that is kind of sad, because I think it is a passage of life to do that. So, yep, we're closing in on about 19 minutes here, so I just wanted to share that. And, again, thank you for watching. Thank you those on Facebook who, I once again am crossing the streams here. I usually keep YouTube and Facebook separate, but thank you for watching. And, again, if you see this on my page on Facebook, feel free to post your comments and memories of Toys R Us. And, I got some more stuff coming up for you soon, so we'll talk again. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.